Well, he's been a senator for only 2 years, but that is not stopping Barack Obama from eyeing the White House a bit. He's got a new book out and a media following that grows bigger with every headline and every TV appearance, and there were plenty of them over the course of the last few days. Carl Cameron is in D.C. with a look at why everybody seems to be talking about Obama. Good afternoon, Carl.
Hi, Martha. This is sort of like a move over John McCain, Hillary Clinton. Barack Obama has made the scene. For months, he's been telling Democratic supporters around the country that he's not going to run for president in 2008. But when you get asked over and over and over again, and when you make the cover of Time magazine and do your sort of star turn on Oprah, after a while, that kind of stuff can get to even a freshman senator. Illinois' Barack Obama, big splash on the national scene with his Democratic convention speech in 2004. He's only been in the Senate for a couple of years. And over the weekend, he told the Sunday talk shows that he was, in fact, considering the possibility of running for president, that he'd make up his decision after this year's November 7th elections. A lot of folks talk about how the midterm elections prior to a presidential campaign can often be a test of who the actual field will be. There seems to be a groundswell, both perhaps in some of the more liberal media and Democratic circles, to bring Obama out. Wherever we go, Martha, you hear Democratic operatives and Democratic voters saying that they have reservations about Hillary Rodham Clinton and whether or not they can support her for president. As the Democratic nominee, she could probably suck an awful lot of the fundraising oxygen away from the rest of the Democratic field. The former First Lady is always on the lips of every single Democratic voter looking at the White House in 2 years. And now comes Obama, who really has rock star status. We have seen him countless times across the country go to events and fundraise for Democratic candidates and utterly outshine those who he's there to support. He's the rock star of 2006, and now he's thinking about running in 2008. Once a candidate says they're thinking about it, pretty much put him in the category of he's running unless something goes wrong.
I think you're right about that, Carl. Carl Cameron, thank you very much for joining us from Washington. Let's see what today's A-list has to say about this. But first, let me read you a quote on this topic from the Chicago Tribune. This is an editorial. It says, wait for 2012. You could be running against an incumbent president from your own party, awkward, or you could face an incumbent from another party, difficult. For the foreseeable future, only 2008 offers an open campaign with no incumbent president or vice president who's planning to run. That's rare. Seize the day, I say. That according to Clarence Page in talking about Obama in 2008. So let's welcome everybody to the table. Cody Willard is a hedge fund manager and columnist for the Financial Times and TheStreet.com. Laura Schwartz is a political analyst and former special assistant to President Clinton. Lis Wiehl is a former prosecutor, and you know her well as a Fox News legal analyst. This is her first time with us. We're thrilled to have her. And today's wild card. They couldn't have guessed who he was hiding behind those hands. Steve Doocy, host of Fox and Friends. And have you heard? The author of Mr. and Mrs. Happy, the Mr. and Mrs. Happy Handbook, Everything I Know About Love and Marriage, which is a wonderful book. Not incredibly long. You're going to learn more about love and marriage along the way, I would guess, but it's a wonderful book. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Martha. How are you?
Good. You know, we watched him come through on Friday morning. He clearly has a real star presence, but the big question is going to be, you know, he could be a media darling for sure, but the underlying experience maybe not so intense.
Well, you know what? And you got to feel sorry for Hillary Clinton. Suddenly she's between Barack and a hard place because Oprah was her friend first. And now Oprah said, hey, why don't you do that? And wait a minute, the thing about him is he's a freshman. Isn't the official rule you got to wait till you're a junior to run for the big seat?
Laura, what do you think about that? You know, I don't care what anyone says. This has to make Hillary nervous.
Well, I don't know if it makes her nervous or the Democratic Party excited that maybe we have more than just one person in the field at this point. You know, Barack Obama, you know, 6 years is a long time to fill out a term and then run because you rack up a voting record.
Right.
Also, they can get you on
which he doesn't have right now.
You become an insider of Washington. People really don't relate to that in the public. And this is great also, by the way, for book sales. He's talking about his presidential aspirations.
I think you're absolutely right about the Democratic Party, but I'm not sure. I think Hillary must be nervous about this. What do you think, Lis?
Of course, absolutely. Here she had the open running field, and now who is this guy? Who is this guy? The buzz. Look, Martha, I knew that he made it, okay, into our culture when my son this weekend, who's in grade school, said, who's this Barack guy? Well, he's going to be our next president? I mean, that's the level we're getting at. I just put out there, what about if he's sidling up maybe to look like he's running for president now, but go on the ticket with Hillary? That would be an amazing ticket.
You know what? Maybe there's something there. Maybe he's not running for president. It's for book sales. And in that case,
how much is he going to
if elected?
Well, Barack Obama did say, Steve, on Friday morning that if he did run, he was going to ask you to be running mate.
Well, you know what? I'm not interested in serving unless it's Secretary of Weather.
Cody, what do you think about the prospects for Obama in 08?
I think his inexperience, first of all, is probably a benefit. It's a good thing for him. You want him to run before he's become entrenched and has compromised all of his ethics and everything else that happens when these guys are in House or
Cynic's
Senate
approach
for
to politics.
10 years.
But what about some knowledge of foreign policy, though?
Well,
I mean, what is he? Who is he? How does he think?
Harvard-trained lawyer. He's
You know what was interesting? When I did ask him about his experience on Friday morning, and it was a lot about the book and, a lot of stuff about his own life and that kind of thing. But when I said to him, you don't have a lot of experience, what do you say? He started telling me all that. He said, well, I've been on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I also have spent more time in other countries than anyone else was running because I was lived overseas.
When he was a freshman in high school.
Exactly. I did the bake sales and the PTA. I mean, what do we know about
in
him?
Chicago, and we are talking about Obama in the coffee shops, in the clubs, in the bars, at the galas. His name is on everybody's
Which
list.
bars?
It's really. There's a place down at State and Division I like to hang out.
In Chicago, which is bigger, Oprah, Obama? Oprah, Obama?
Hey, Oprah's bringing Obama right up next.
It's a pretty powerful team.
He's big
Oprah
in
has
New
the
York,
personal,
too, for the record, right? I mean, we're here sitting here talking about it.
Steve, you've watched a lot of elections in the media. Is there a question in your mind about whether or not he's peaked too early? I mean, when I see somebody's face on the cover of Time magazine, I think, it's not going to happen.
Well, but who do you think Time magazine wants to win? Because on the cover with Hillary Clinton, it said, "Why do people hate her?" And on the cover with him, it's our next president.
In big words. It was
Big, our
why
next
he might
president.
be
Whoop,
slower, but the next president is bold, right?
A lot of Republicans are saying, sort of secretly, hey, we hope he runs because we're going to be able to tear him down. It's sort of a straw man because he doesn't have the experience that a Hillary Clinton.
But again, I think people vote on personality, and I was with this guy in the green room and his wife Michelle before he spoke at the Democratic National Convention in 2004. Great, honest, warm, charismatic, gave that speech, changed his life. He was the new face of the future of the Democratic Party. He's still that man that he was in the green
comes
room.
across like that, even in the interviews,
But is this his moment? We just have 30 seconds, Cody, but I'm going to let you take this. Is this his moment? And how important is it not to miss your moment?
Well, right, and that's just it. Even on Wall Street, we have this thing that's called the contrarian indicator of the magazine, right? And so when a magazine like Time puts the bull market up on the cover, the bull market's probably over. So you got to wonder, is it too early? Is he peaking too early? Perhaps.
It's like being on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Rookie of the Year.
Exactly. All right, hold on, guys. We're going to come back with a lot more. Madonna has been living with her adopted son, David, in London for almost a week now. Coming up next, which one of her celebrity friends reportedly convinced her not to go through the adoption process in California, but to do it in Africa instead? And we're going to meet AJ, the banker. He is young. He's kind of like Cody a little bit. He lives like a celebrity.
Oh, no, come on.
And you might find his behavior totally obnoxious, unlike Cody. $200 cocktails. What is a $200 cocktail? And partying all night, is this the new face of Wall Street or just business as usual for those guys? We're going to take it up with our A-list when we come right back. Stay with us.